have always loved texture and details on clothes and fabric, and we are living in a resurgence of embroidery styles and techniques. Not only does it give us an appreciation for clothes of the past, but we are finding new and brilliant ways to apply it to our garments of today. Today's guest, Saskia Ter Welle, trained in haute couture embroidery techniques at the renowned Ecole Lesage in Paris. And she's passing on those skills at her Dutch Couture Academy in the Netherlands. And she's going to tell us all about it. So grab your sewing and a cup of tea, and here's my interview with Saskia Ter Welle. Welcome, Saskia, to the show. Whereabouts in the world are you coming to us from?
Hello, thank you for inviting me here. I'm from the Netherlands, this small little country in Europe, where you have the windmills and things like that, yes.
Now, I understand that you're coming to us just from down the river from Zutphen, which I've been to several times. Is that right?
I'm from a smaller village even than Zutphen, just a little bit upstream of the river. The next town is Doesburg, and we call it the little brother of Zutphen. Beautiful. It's an historical town, like very small village proportions, but it has official city rights, so it is since hundreds of years. So it is very authentic, and 150 monuments on a really small spot in town. It's really beautiful.
Are you originally from that part of the Netherlands?
No. I'm originally from The Hague, which is at the coast. Yeah. So no, I'm not originally here. I live here, though, already 25 years, and it is a beautiful place. It is like you have the atmosphere of a town, but the quiet of a village. And still, Amsterdam is just an hour drive from here, so no big deal.
Now, I know that you are a master embroiderer. Actually, you're a super master, but let's just kind of start back at the beginning. Were cloth and textiles part of your family's culture?
Definitely. Yes, my mother loved textile, clothing, creating yourself, designing yourself. So she provided me with materials from a very young age. I even have a small embroidery piece from the age of 8. Yeah, it was a natural thing, and I loved it. So I have sisters. They don't do it as much as I do, but I loved it, and I got like bags full of fabric scratches to make clothes for the Barbie dolls, of course. Like everyone of my age started, I think, that way. And it was a good hobby for me. But in the Netherlands, you have like, if you are capable of doing high-level education, most of the time you are encouraged to do that instead of using your hands. I went to university and studied French when I was young. Originally, I did not start in fashion, although I have always created my own clothes from a very young age and designed and learned new techniques over and over. It was not my profession originally, but it became my profession later in life.
What was the triggering point that made you switch from a hobby into something more intentional?
Now, it happened to be a hobby that is easy to develop yourself in, even if you have a family. So I raised 4 children, and I took courses every year. I took courses in the evenings. I used my spare time to learn new skills, and gradually I started learning how to draw my patterns, and I became interested in other techniques like moulage, draping. Naturally, in my heart is a love for quality, high quality fabrics, high quality designs, everything that is really beautiful. So I'm not the type of person who would go sit behind a lock machine and create easy jersey wrap dresses all over again. No, that's not me. I love handmade details. I love extensive work on a small piece. So gradually I diverted more into haute couture. That became more my interest, and also the design part. And then I heard about, by accident, I heard about a school in Paris, Ecole Lesage, and that is part of Chanel, where they teach embroidery techniques from haute couture.
Embroidery just really seems to be making it, I'm not going to say a comeback because it never really went away, but it's a new appreciation of embroidery has come to pass in the last 4 years, don't you think?
Definitely, definitely. Yes. And it is still growing. Like I started 12 years ago. And then in the Netherlands, it was a subject not spoken about, not written about. It was quiet. There were some people that went to Paris and were able to use the techniques from the couture houses in Paris, but they did not write, they did not promote it, they did not teach it. So I thought, okay, this is really interesting. Let's dive into it. And I decided to create classes in haute couture embroidery in the Netherlands and talk about it and blogged about it. And that made a huge difference. So yeah, that was very easily picked up by media, by musea. So I got invited to teach in during specific couture exhibitions in musea. I was invited to teach classes in embroidery to show people how it is made by hand and help them experience part of this handmade beauty.
Mm.
So, and yeah, then it took off really easily. Yeah.
When you went to Ecole Lesage, was it expected that you would go on to work for Chanel?
That is a good question, actually. Like people go there from all over the world. They go to Paris to be taught these special techniques, and every single student dreams of working for Chanel. But of course, Chanel has only limited spaces. Especially the haute couture designs are embroidered in France. The pret-à-porter mainly is embroidered in India for Lesage. So they have their own ateliers in India. So the people that work in Paris, it's a small group, and if they need more hands, you are just flown in for a few weeks or days, and that's it. So there is not a huge perspective for people to become professional embroiderers like that, which is interesting because I started when after my 45th birthday. I started building a business. So I was thinking, okay, if I'm dependent on a job, I can search for a long time because it's so rare, it's so specific. If I'm going to make beautiful things in a small studio in the attic of a building and nobody knows about me, oh no, that will never go and work. So I decided to do two things. From the moment I started developing my embroidery techniques, I started learning how to use the internet, and they went up side by side with the same effort and the same time and energy. And that has made all the difference. And then, although people say in art and craft, you cannot earn a living, it's very hard. It's this talk about it, always about hard, it's difficult. I thought, okay, but how can you do it differently? Is there another way? And yes, if you start developing your skills in internet, you know that there are many, many different ways to earn a living with craftsmanship. That's what I'm seeing that is happening right now for many people. So I teach not only classes in the technique, because that's where I started, transferring the methods from Paris and teach it to people in the Netherlands. But I realized very soon that giving people the tools not only to learn the technique, but also discover how they can make money with it. That's even better, because then you create independent craftsmen. And there are many women that are really touched by the beauty of handmade products. Yes. They love to do it, but they don't dare to think even about making that their source of income. But it is possible. Not if you just copy what other people are doing, but if you get to know yourself. And yes, that's the beauty of getting older. You get to know yourself a little bit more. And if you use the skills that you already developed in your past, they might be completely different. And you combine it with your love of craftsmanship, there are so many possibilities. Yeah, that's really a very, very empowering thing.
Now, as you've studied this, and I truly a year ago, I had no idea there were so many different types of embroidery. You specialized in tambour. Is that's where you become the master?
I like to make explain this a little bit. It's a really good question, because tambour, that is this special hook. It is a holder with a, yeah, you can't see it probably here, but it
A little
has
tiny hook.
a tiny hook, like a crochet. So this hook, you work through the fabric. That is tambour embroidery, and you can work with beads and sequins and threads. There are lots of possibilities with this technique, but it is too narrow to say I'm specializing in tambour. It is part of what they use in Paris for Chanel and Dior, which is called in French broderie d'art. And broderie d'art is like embroidery art. And it is a combination of techniques, both with the crochet and with needle and thread, both. So it's the combination. Right. If you do a cross stitch, you have only needle and thread and a color, and that's in the same stitch. That's the only way you work. With broderie d'art, you have metallic threads, you have embroidery threads, just like this, the simple stuff. You also have raffia that you work with. Beautiful, beautiful chenille threads, very soft feeling. You want to touch it really. Sequence beads, you have lots of materials, and it is like working with the differences in both color, darker or lighter tones, shine or matte materials, volume or very flat, working with those extremes like in one piece of embroidery, that makes it very interesting, and it never gets boring. But it is like, if you would only do tambour, it would be still very flat. And the beauty of the embroidery that I teach is that it is layered. It has multiple stories in one piece, multiple dimensions in one piece. Yeah.
I absolutely love texture. I've always been attracted to, like, your blog and your photos were just like a candy store for me, because I just always have loved those textures and bling and beads and all those different types of things. I saw on your website you are a TR master. Actually, you're a super master. How did you get that master status? And how do you get super master?
Okay, yeah, that is something completely different. It has nothing to do with embroidery.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay.
I started building a full-time business with broderie d'art, with the embroidery techniques. So many people know me from this part, but before, even when I had children at home, I started with a small business in making garments made to measure. And that's my first love, like creating unique designs in fashion. So for me, the broderie d'art was the cherry on the cake. It was like the sparkle, the thing that makes it really even better, like really beautiful evening wear. It is, yeah, embroidery is used by Chanel and Dior for the top designs. It's just exquisite. So that's something I really like. But I also like creating garments. And in that perspective, I found another technique which is incredibly interesting. And I think even for quilters, very interesting, because it is Japanese pattern techniques. And TR, it's a short term to say transformational reconstruction. And it is a term used by the Japanese designer Shingo Sato. He starts with a simple pattern, a simple design, and he transforms it into something very intricate by folding and cutting and draping. Many people know him because he has these designs in black and white with origami. But for me, the learning his techniques have been really transformational, because you create new forms and new ideas, because you get a very in-depth understanding of what you are actually doing when creating a pattern. But like the origami, that could be really interesting in quilts. Maybe it is already somewhere in quilting countries. I don't know.
It's interesting because fabric is so different from paper, and understanding where there's an overlap of what you can do and what you can't do. There's certainly the art of bojagi from Korea, and there's similar techniques in Japan. And we get the sashiko stitching from Japan that's very popular in quilting now too. But trying to get your fabric to do what you're talking about, I don't think I've ever seen in quilting.
But because quilt is still flat,
Yeah.
It could be easily incorporated, I think. And what is so difficult in TR design is that it is on a female body with all its curves.
Yes.
And how do you create a fitting garment that still has this crisp and very neat look of origami folded designs? It's a challenge. And that's something I really like. And if you want to know yourself a bit and see what you can do, I love challenges. I love something that is too difficult for me. And then aim for that. That brings me so much joy. Yeah.
So was this all before you went off to l'Ecole Lesage, or were they at the same time?
At the same time. Yeah. And I started at Ecole Lesage like 2010, 11, something like that. I started my business a little later as well. And at first I thought that I would present my embroideries to Dutch fashion designers and have them hire me for their embroideries, but they didn't have the money for it. And because I already had a business in making clothes by hand individually, I started my own couture label. So that's what I do now. So next to the teaching and the classes, I also create my own collections and I make garments for clients, very specific, very unique pieces. Yeah. If you make something unique for your client, it is a beautiful example as well for teaching your students. So it's always going back and forth, and it makes it really diverse and practical. It's never from a theoretical point of view. It's always from the real experience and the real application, how to translate this idea into a garment.
In a garment that fits somebody.
Oh, yes. Preferably me. No, but preferably a real person. And you know, women are all different and nobody fits exactly in a confection garment. It's a nightmare, actually. So creating something that really fits well, that is already beauty in itself. And if you then can use beautiful materials that the person who will wear it really appreciates because of the color, the texture, the way it is used, because it also needs to level up with your lifestyle, of course. If you are a mother and you have children around, you don't want something that can only be brought to the dry cleaner. You need something that can be put in the machine and back on track the next day. So yeah, you always have a lot of different things to take into account when designing.
I find it very interesting that clothing used to be fitted. Even if you sewed your own clothes, you would fit them to yourselves. And therefore, they looked better on you because they fitted. Where we went through this, and we're still going through it, this fast fashion where we're supposed to fit inside something instead of the clothes fitting us. And this crazy way people diet and maintain their bodies almost as a hobby, as opposed to making the garment fit you.
Totally. Yeah. And at the same time, the stress around, will I be able to fit into the garment?
Yeah.
At the same time, you have all those garments that are just too wide to actually flatter someone because they want to make sure that as many people as possible can be buying these garments. So yeah, it has a lot of things, but that's why I think still made to measure is king. Yeah.
Now, last week we had the Met Gallery with all these incredible out there outfits, dresses. I mean, so impractical, but they're works of art. And they talk about how many thousands of hours of embroidery and beading and everything went into that. How does that actually work? Like, is it like 25 people working on a dress at one time?
Yes, that's the only way it's possible. Because if you don't do it like that, then it will take years and you don't have years. So like the Met Gala, I don't know really how much time upfront they start with the process, but it will be not more than months, I think. So then they have an idea and it has to be executed very fast. So that's when they call in all the embroideries, and then you have a job for 2 months and you can work. You have large frames where 6 people can work at the same time on the same panel of a dress. So yeah, that is how it works. Yeah. I was, by the way, very impressed by 2 specific dresses.
Which ones?
There is one, I don't know who was wearing it, but it was a dress made by a Dutch designer. She has an exhibition in Paris right now. Now, I just forget her name now. She's very famous, but she makes beautiful dresses. And there was also a dress by, I think it was Balmain, and it seems like sculpted with scent around the body. You have to look how it looks. It is insane. It's like beige, and it seems as they molded fabric around the body, and
I know which one you're talking about.
They glued like sand and crystals to this fabric. She couldn't even walk, I think. She had to be picked up and set.
Yes, lifted up the stairs.
Something like that. It was really funny, but it was that was really groundbreaking, I think. Yeah, it's always very specific what they think of at the Met Gala. I love it.
Some of it is very provocative too, like
yeah,
women that wear the corsets that are memories of Victorian age where they cinch you down, or anything that makes you uncomfortable. I mean, I personally believe clothes should be comfortable.
Oh yes, for daily life, but for an event like this, then it's just for this moment. Yeah. I like the drama in it. There is a difference.
With the big things on the head and everything. Just saw an interview with Celine Dion. She was talking about her wedding gown, and she had this crown. And the day after her wedding, she had this great big egg-sized bump on the middle of her forehead. It was so heavy. But she said she wouldn't have traded it for anything.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how are the embroidery techniques being modernized for today? How do you see them moving from traditional to modern style?
The techniques itself are not modernized. I think they are still exactly the same. I think the materials and the way people use the techniques, they change. So what surprised me when I started, I thought, okay, everything at Chanel is exquisite, you know, like the best quality. So it must be silks, cottons, linens, beautiful pearls, you know, like the best of the best. That was what I was thinking. And then suddenly I discovered an embroidery, and they used neon type of plastics. Okay. Very bright yellow, hurting your eyes. Small pieces in an embroidery. You would not recognize it from afar, but if you looked close, then you would see it. And it added this sparkle and vivid color to it, which was really nice. And then I started looking more intensely to all the details in embroideries, and I saw, okay, the most important thing in embroidery for haute couture is the impact the total embroidery will make on the design, and not specific that it should be this or it should be that. I think the design is very important.
That must be interesting, because you've got to think of the design and how it looks from across the room. But you're working at this small scale, this micro scale, but it's, as you're saying, it's working on this maximum impact.
Yeah. So you can put a lot of effort in the small detail, but in the end, you might wonder how important this small detail will be in the total view, and where to put your effort in, really. There are choices to be made every day. So I think for me, understanding what you are doing and why you are doing is very important, not just learning a skill and then just doing it, following the rules one by one. It should be like this, it should be like that. No, always wonder by yourself and think, okay, now I'm embroidering this. Which technique will I use and why? What purpose will it have? Is there a better way to do it? Can I think of a way to do it quicker or with a different type of material, what would give the best impact? So always discuss with yourself, what am I doing and why, and not only doing it because someone says so.
So how critical are mistakes then in embroidery when the impact is from across the room? How easily can you hide a mistake, or do you worry about mistakes?
I remember working for a Dutch designer who was not happy with the embroidery that he got back from Lesage, Atelier Lesage. And I thought, oh, I don't know what he does not like about it. I could not understand. I was not seeing it. But so there are differences in how people see results. Yes, people have different tastes or feelings with it. I don't know. You need to become your own critic if you are an embroiderer. I think that is, and improve yourself from day to day. Then you become better at it every day. There is a huge part in embroidery, and I think in all pieces, all sorts of craftsmanship, in the role of your personality. So I have had tons of students here and interns from fashion schools, from the Netherlands, from abroad. I have students from the Netherlands and everywhere in the world. And within 2 hours, they're here in the studio. I know the main feature of their personality and how it translates into their work, because it is a strong connection. And some people are really great at designing for embroidery. They have a great feel for texture, for colors, combinations, different use of something that I would have never thought of, like people have all their different specialties and eyes for things. And there are people that are working so precise and they make beautiful, impeccable embroideries and everything in between. So discovering what is your strength is key in your profession, and see what you can do best, and maybe work together with someone who has different strengths so you can make the best of both. But in the end, the beauty, I think, is that handmade products are alive. They have a soul. They have imperfections because they are human-made. And that is the beauty of handmade products. And the more you work with your hands and you watch things made by other people by hand, the more you start to appreciate the imperfections. They are the beauty. If you have a machine for embroidery, they make every stitch perfect. It looks so neat and clean. That is, in a way, beautiful. But I've started to embrace the imperfections and see how the irregularity gives you a lot of room to grow, and a lot of room to make interpretations of something that other people will perceive as the same, but they are not. I once made a design for a collar, a neckline, and I had inspiration from a book, and it was like curls. It was very simple in black. And you could print it out and copy it and make it look really beautiful and perfect. And I decided just to draw like this by hand. And they were all different. But still, if you look at the design, it looks perfect. Not in the sense of a machine embroidery that is very regular. It is irregular, but it was very cohesive, very natural. I think natural is a good word for it. It has a natural flow, a natural feel to it, but it looks beautiful. But if you would compare it with a computer design, it will be completely different.
So in quilting, we're always talking about using vintage materials and sustainability, but having to deal with the problem of deterioration in those products as well. Is there a timeline for how long your materials are good for? How quickly do they deteriorate, and do you use vintage items?
I love vintage items, but especially for tambour embroidery, you use pre-strung beads. They are on a thread, and if you can find some vintage ones, they have a beautiful feel to it, different than new materials. But the thread deteriorates. So what might happen is that before you even start working with it, it falls apart, and then all your beads are on the floor, and then you have to string them yourselves. that is something that is very strange, and you are not lucky on that day. So that is a difficulty. With threads, it goes a long way. I have beautiful threads that are impeccable after 50 or 80 years, still very usable, no problem at all. If you have beads that are in the sunlight, they get worse. So you need to make sure they are kept in the dark, then they can really look beautiful. And if you talk about sequins, there are sequins from the 20s of last century. They were made of gelatine.
Okay.
And if you are not aware and it gets wet, they disappear. So there are some materials that are not practical to be used anymore. Yeah.
So tell me about your Dutch Couture Academy.
Yeah, Dutch Couture Academy. Actually, it is the place where I am right now. It is in the center of Doesburg, this old city in the Netherlands, in the eastern part of the Netherlands. And I actually, all the techniques that I learned the past years in that are all directed towards creating unique couture garments are taught here in person, but also online. I have a lot of online courses. So the beauty actually is that above this studio, the top floor is a B&B. I have two rooms for guests. So 4 people can stay here. Yeah, it's only, I think 3 weeks ago, I had an international week in this studio, students sleeping above and in town because there are lots of B&Bs around. Yeah, then we dive into a topic that is close to their heart, and it is different from week to week. I always assess upfront what people would love to learn, what their background is, and try to combine their interests in one program that is interesting for all of them, and then diverting a bit according to level or experience or focus. Yeah.
So how many students do you have at once?
8 mostly. 8. Yeah, the most. Often the groups are smaller, but 8 would be the most. So it's always very personal, very lots of attention in a very inspirational environment. Like this building is a monument with a beautiful Jugendstil facade.
Facade.
That's it's really nice. And because most of the time people come here for at least a day or a few days in a row, it is always a transformation for people. It's like being inspired not only by the beauty of the old city, but also by the techniques itself, and mainly I think the most important is the community of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have no relatives, no friends around that are as interested in craftsmanship as they are, and being able to talk all day about fabrics, techniques, threads, it's just a joy for people to do. And what I really like and what I see as a big difference nowadays compared to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it would be like fashion and textile oriented people coming here. And nowadays, it's more and more also artists joining courses here, because the overflow from techniques from one place to another, there are so many possibilities. So even photographers could print their pictures on fabric and then embroider it to add shine to it, for example. So if you have, for example, if you have a view on New York and all the buildings, and you imagine that you embroider it with sequins and you see the evening light, and that is beautiful. You know, there are people working with ceramics that want to incorporate it, or people designing furniture, or all kinds of directions. People come to learn the embroidery technique. So, and that makes a group always very interesting, because you start to share your experience, right? That's what you do. Women talk. So we have a lot of coffee breaks, very important. And we have a nice lunch during the day, and we talk about why we do what we do and how to improve things. We talk about what inspires us, and I think this exchange of ideas and where people come from is very uplifting to people. It gives you new ideas.
I call it filling my bucket. Like there's so many things in life that deplete us, but when we're working in that craft that tickles your brain, you know, there's not a better feeling. Like it's just such a lovely, how close you can become to strangers just because you have that in common.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah, within an hour, it's done, you know, and then the rest of the week, you are best friends. And then the beauty of here is like if you have people that are staying in the B&B, they come at night, they come down and continue their craft, you know, during the night because it's so much fun and they talk. It's just, it is you are fully into it. You have no distractions of your daily life. You have no taking care of your family. You have no job, no other things than just enjoying learning new skills, which is great.
So have you passed on your love of embroidery and fabric and couture to any of your children?
No. 3 daughters, one son. No, they're not that much interested. And if they are, I tried, of course. But if they are, like my youngest daughter is now a little bit interested, but she says, no, don't tell me anything. If I have a needle and thread, I will fix it myself. Okay. I'm fine. You know, what I think is very important that you find something that your heart brings you joy. And if that's not fabric, it's okay. They have other talents and skills and things they love, and that is totally fine. What I did do is I share a lot of experiences with my husband, who doesn't touch a needle and thread at all, but he loves going to musea with me, exhibitions. We enjoy that together, really. And because I started somewhere, you grow in it together, you know, like the first time you go to an exhibition, you think, okay, is this it? But you start to see things, you start to talk about things, and the more you know, the more you see, and the more you see, you get to know even more. And it is a continuous process, and you can share it in different ways. So that's fine as well. Yeah.
You've actually published 2 books as well, haven't you?
Yes. Before I started in the Dutch Couture Academy, I wrote a book, The Old-Fashioned Way, about coffee, totally different subject, but I'm a barista as well. We printed it. We have our own publishing company, and it was printed and in all the bookstores in the Netherlands. And that's a lot of work. And as I was growing my knowledge in the use of internet, I found out about digital books. So I decided to publish them on Kindle, Amazon. It is so easy to do. It has some limitations. So you don't have a lot of options for beautiful photography. You don't get them printed. I did for a while, I did have it printed by Amazon, but that does not give the quality people are looking for when buying a book about embroidery. So they were very disappointed. So I stopped that. And now you need to know how to use a Kindle book, because I still get reviews from people that don't understand the beauty of it. So there is a limitation. So not a lot of pictures, but the beauty is that there are links in the book that direct you to a website. So if you click on those links, then I have additional resources on a hidden page on my website with patterns, instructions how to create your own embroidery frame, videos. So there is a lot of extra that is far more than the book only for the readers of the book. And that is something new, which is 20 years ago, this was not possible. Now it is possible. And if you are open to discover all those new possibilities, you can learn a lot. And yeah, that's really lovely.
Do you have some examples of your work that you can show us?
Sure, of course. My love is garments. So I have garments, but also like the smaller ones, the smaller things are things like this, where you see all those different materials, or small clutches. So here you see the flowers with beads and sequins and the ribbons are accentuated with beads. You can't really see it, but it gives some shine and depth to it. Like this, a transparent top, cape, kind of. garment, but with Swarovski teardrops and vintage beads, or like this
Oh, wow.
embroidered in the garment. So it's not separate and attached to it. It is in the design of the garment, so you don't have to cut anywhere. It's really integrated in the design. And that is, I think, the beauty of broderie d'art. If you compare it to a fabric that is beaded and you cut it, that's also beautiful, but it has a completely different appearance. Like here in this dress, this is also embroidered in the design of the dress. By the way, this has been transformed by transformational pattern cutting.
Okay.
So of course, I do all those crossovers in the designs. And here, this is a corset at the top of black velvet with embroidered leaves. And they are all different, but because they are in the same color, okay, look at this, the same color scheme, they look cohesive, but they are all different in size and in embroidery, but they still are, they really belong to each other. And they are like finished as applications almost, and they are put on with a structure. So it is like if they are falling down from the tree. Yeah, that is something you can do with embroidery as well. So it can be integrated into the garment itself. And here it is put on top of it with a purpose.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I hope we can meet up when I'm in Holland.
I would love to. You're more than welcome.
Well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Saskia Ter Welle as much as I did. I liked it so much that I added a stop at her academy on my textile tour of the Netherlands in September. And if you would like to join us for that tour, you can find that link on my homepage on my website. If you want to find out more about Saskia and the Dutch Couture Academy, I will leave a link to her website, her social media, and her contact information in the video notes below. Next time you're in your sewing room, be sure to have Karen's Quilt Circle playing in the background. I have interviewed so many amazing people on this show. Let one inspire you. And don't forget to check out last week's video. Take care, and I'll see you next time.